Hello, and welcome to the Foresight from 2020 Virtual Summit. I'm Duncan MacPherson, and on behalf of the entire team at Pareto Systems and our community of fee-for-service professionals, thank you for investing your time. We don't take it lightly. We know there's so much you could be doing right now instead of being here, and our objective is to make sure that your ROI is immense. Let's talk first of all about the theme, Foresight from 2020. Now we all know the expression that hindsight is 2020. It's a phenomenal study, and I like to think a gift in terms of looking back on decisions of the past and refining and optimizing how we do things going forward. But here we are, it's September. You might know that in May we did a virtual summit called the Coiled Spring, and the whole objective was to ensure that our community of professionals weren't getting bogged down just trying to get through this bizarre disruption, but more focusing on being a leader, being a voice of reason, and really focusing on what it looks like when we emerge from this. I, for one, am extremely optimistic. I mean, again, 2020. I believe that at some point in the future, we're going to look back on this kind of like the way we look back on Y2K, right? I mean, I'm not downplaying any of it, but I would like to think that we're going to come out of this and life is going to get really, really good. I use the analogy, it's like if you've ever tried to hold a beach ball underwater at some point, and that's the way I envision the world. I think some really great things are going to happen, and your role in helping your clients navigate through all the decisions and the complexity of the future and helping them look to the future with anticipation. Your calling, your sense of purpose as a fee-for-service professional is going to be amplified. Now, speaking of purpose, the purpose of this conference is ultimately to ensure that you can make some adjustments throughout the rest of this year as we head towards Q4 and have that momentum carry forward into 2021 and make that your best year ever. Approach this with a spectrum of goals. And what I mean by that is you might be looking at this sort of a la carte, kind of like back of the napkin, where you're just going to take away just a couple of things. At a minimum, I'd like to think that we're going to help you identify 6 to 8 to 10 gaps, just little tweaks that you can make to find that next level of refinement and optimization. If you follow golf, Justin Rose is very well respected, and his mindset for not hitting a plateau and constantly finding that next level of productivity, he says that he doesn't try to find one thing to improve on by 10%. He tries to find 10 things that he can improve on by 1%. And I mean, he covers the spectrum, everything from yoga and flexibility to diet to his outlook, sports psychology, all of it. And so what I'm hoping that from this conference, you'll draw some of those little adjustments that as a composite will lead to some big improvements. Let me set some expectations, because if you think beyond that, I mean, there are many of our clients who have completely started reimagining their lives and their future, rethinking their role, and very positive things have come out of that exercise. So again, at a minimum, 6, 8, 10 little adjustments, or a full approach to unlocking the next level for you going forward. Let me just quickly walk through the agenda. You've already probably seen it in our correspondence leading up to today. After the opening remarks, I'm going to get into my presentation called Finish Strong. And I've been doing variations of this for many years as we approach the fourth quarter each and every year. But obviously this will be a little bit different. After my Finish Strong presentation, I'm going to hand it over to Terry and Sherri. Very meaningful coaches within the Pareto Systems community, and they'll be talking about how to capitalize on referability. After Terry and Sherri, I'm going to hand it to my good friend Steve Phillips from Advisor Protocol, and he'll be talking about branding and positioning with a view on the future. Then after Steve, it'll be Scott Hamilton. He'll be giving his perspectives and insights on target marketing, all drawn from his interactions with elite fee-for-service professionals. Then we'll bring on a really special guest, Ted Jenkin from HyperChat and Oxygen Financial, and he'll be talking with immense credibility on the theme of lead generation and client acquisition. From there, I'm going to interview Aaron Hassler from Skyview, and we'll be talking about growth through acquisition and specific strategies for how you can finance that growth professionally and predictably. Then it's Marcy Freed, another one of our long-term coaches. She'll be hosting a growth roundtable with two exceptional teams that we've been working with for a long time, with a balance on both organic and scalable growth. From there, we go to Elaine Christakos, another coach. She'll be talking about team dynamics and communication, which obviously was revealed as being incredibly important throughout 2020, even more so than normally. After Elaine, I'm going to hand it to Idea Decanter, Sharon and Laura. Specific strategies that are very timely around using video for marketing and business development. I'm then going to wrap up talking about strategic planning and goal setting. If you're like me, this is the time of year where I really start thinking about how I can invest all of this into the next year and beyond, and I can assess some of my wins and some of the adversity I've had to address, either things out of my control or things that I engineered myself, whatever the case may be. And we're also going to be presenting a supplement. It's going to be a video of me walking through a number of questions that were asked by people who subscribed to the Foresight from 2020 Summit. The number of questions we got were extensive, but also very thoughtful questions that I think you'll be very interested that might not have occurred to you, but will probably be, at least to some degree, very applicable. And I thought we had to do them justice, so that'll be a standalone and we'll make that available. So with that, I want to talk about some of the resources we're going to provide. It's going to be a full bundle. You don't need to be left to your own devices. This won't have the lasting value of a caffeine rush. Everything we get into, we're going to make available for you. The format of the way we're producing this summit, is designed for archiving, so you can access or make available to team members in the future, but also tools and templates and specific actionable items, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we're very, very excited to be able to provide that for you. And of course, this isn't going to be an infomercial for our services, but we will make it very clear in terms of how you can engage with us if you are looking for an accountability partner to help you unlock that next level for you going forward. So it will be very incremental as we chip away. Speaking of resources, I want to offer up a shout out to a friend of mine. Many of you would know Kevin Bishop. He's part of the practice management team at First Trust Portfolios. Just incredible insight on practice management and business development. But he recently suggested I read a book called Legacy by James Kerr. If you liked The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you're going to really enjoy Legacy. It's a different perspective on excellence and leadership, because it's, quite frankly, a study on a sporting team called the All Blacks, a rugby team from New Zealand. Now, New Zealand's a small nation. Rugby's a global sport, and yet the All Blacks dominate. I think they win something like 86% of the games they compete in, which is unheard of. But here's the thing about legacy. It's not talking about how to be a better rugby player. It talks about building great people. And if you're a fan of John Wooden or Lou Holtz, you're going to love this book. And incidentally, speaking of Kevin Bishop, he and his colleague Jackie Wilkie at First Trust are just putting the finishing touches on a white paper called Foundations and Innovations. This is a sneak peek I got, and it talks about how to thrive amidst uncertainty as a fee-for-service professional. It is a deep dive. So if you have a relationship with First Trust, speak to your wholesaler and put yourself on the list to get yourself a copy of Foundations and Innovations by Kevin and Jackie, because it's solid. Okay, so let's launch into finishing strong in 2020. So here we are, it's late September, Q4, just around the corner. Lots of noise, lots of uncertainty, and unprecedented distractions. You might have heard me talk about being the fountain, not the drain. I mean, it's so easy to get sucked into the negativity. What I'd like you to be thinking about is the scope and the importance of the role you play, the shadow you cast. So just be incredibly deliberate about planting very optimistic seeds for the future. You know the expression, it's not what you say, it's what they hear. You're a leader, especially now. I love the cliche that calm seas never produced a skilled sailor. I like the saying, and I think it's from ancient Greece, that wise men never get to enjoy the shade from the trees they plant. I mean, there is a lot of delayed gratification, a lot of future pacing. I'll be talking about that. But here's my point. In your next wave of conversations with your clients, on the phone or on a digital platform, I want you to tell them how excited you are, primarily by the fact that you and your team over the course of the last several months have used this bizarre disruption as an opportunity to work on your business. I know you take a lot of pride in the client experience you provide, but you're not complacent. And what's tethered you through the disruption as a team is the opportunity to elevate. And just simply say to your client, so first of all, what you're conveying is, look, we haven't been playing defense or been scrambling. We're using this as an opportunity. That's one of the silver linings. But then start to plant the seed and just simply say, one of the things that you've realized and come to notice is that you've got these great relationships with clients, but you've got some clients that are just not aware of everything you do. You're kind of your own best kept secret. And then just simply tell them that through the rest of this year, in your interactions, you're going to be unveiling some enhancements and revisiting some things that maybe your clients are not aware of. And you're excited about that. So the concept is future pacing, not where you are, but where you're going, where the relationship is going. You know how I like to talk in terms of metaphors and symbolism and things that people can relate to, getting away from the jargon. You can say to your client that you're kind of like the proverbial iceberg. And there are the things that you see that are self-evident. There they are. But there's so much below the surface. And you want to just remove that mystery for your clients. And this is where you start to open up the conversation around the difference between a financial plan and financial planning. And planning panoramically for the rest of the client's life and into the next generation. You might have heard me use the analogy of the Sherpa, right? So somebody who climbs Mount Everest, the goal of the Sherpa is not to get them to the summit, it's to get them back down. You know, the average climber spends less than 15 minutes on the summit. It's that brief, the win, after all that effort. Think about your client. The goal is not to achieve financial independence. That is a goal, but it's not the goal. It's their entire life and then into the next generation. And most climbers, for lack of a better term, get in more trouble coming down than they do getting back up. The whole premise of future pacing around continuity, succession, family investment, legacy, next gen is such a big deal. But it's not just that type of money in motion. How many clients of ours have we talked to who have had substantial clients of theirs who have sold a second home, right? Sold a business, sold a rental property, sold some speculative investments that were outside of the overall process. Big liquidity events. Get out in front of that. So I want to talk about balance, balancing the quantitative with the qualitative. I'll get more into this as the day unfolds. Remember, part of the balance is high tech, high touch. Again, what's been revealed through all of this is the importance of the client experience and that high touch connection. I don't know when the last time you placed an album onto a turntable. You know, I've got all kinds of digital music, but there's something about analog, right? The experiential holding it in your hands. I want you to find that balance, that sweet spot. So the first thing I'm going to say on that is, and this might come off as being a little bit strong, but the review meeting is obsolete. The concept of a rehash for something that's already happened, where the focal point is on decisions around products and pricing and performance and technical I'm not downplaying any of that. I just want you to start thinking in terms of where it's all going and be more forward-looking and branding as part of your service model and client experience face-to-face, either digitally or in person with clients, as being strategy and tactical meetings where you invest the past into the future and it's the lifeblood of your process and your service model and your client experience. Now, there's 3 steps to the strategy and tactical meeting. You might do 1 a year, you might do 2 a year, you might do 4 a year, depending on the complexity of the client. But there's always 3 steps: the ramp up, the execution, and the form follow through. So whatever the experience is, if it's virtual or in person, you're always sending the agenda in advance via email with the confirmation for that meeting and asking the client to print it out so they can hold it in their hands and start writing down some of the things that are on their mind and bring that with them to that meeting. So they're not winging it, they're coming in, the pump is primed. They're predisposed, they're fully engaged, and that increases the likelihood that they will stick to the meeting and not blow it off and say, hey, whatever you think, I trust you. Right? Which is not good. It's great that they trust you, but not if they don't see the value in the meeting. Now let's talk about the agenda itself. Now we're providing for you an actual agenda as part of that bundle I mentioned. I'm sure you use an agenda now. I'm not suggesting your current agenda is flawed, but and you're going to personalize it in your own way, but let me just walk you through this agenda. The first item, and this comes from an interaction from a very long-term client of ours. The first bullet on his agenda in a strategy and tactical meeting is, how's life? How's life? That's what he leads with. Now, that reminds me, Chris Jepson, who heads up practice management at First Trust, he co-wrote the Advisor Playbook with me. He uses this great analogy. He says, when you go to a doctor's appointment, it becomes pretty obvious that the doctor starts thinking about you the moment they walk in the room and pull the clipboard off the back of the door. And obviously there's, rapport, and they're sincerely interested. And chances are they stop thinking about you when they put the clipboard back. And that's fine. And you think about your clients' other interactions with other fee-for-service professionals. There's pleasantries, but there's not a thread necessarily woven through. There's chemistry, there's rapport, there's trust, but very technical, very much fixating on the transactions and the core competency of the professional. That's fine. But remember the old expression. It's more important to be interested than try to be interesting. Right? So just start off the conversation that way. The next bullet on the agenda in this version is the pinpointed update, where you're giving the client the opportunity to tell you what's going on in their life beyond just sort of the 30,000 feet, but any specific changes that have occurred. Whether it's on a business level, a personal level, whatever the case may be. This is where you can start to tell stories about some of your other clients to activate belonging that have nothing to do with rates of return. Next bullet, your evolving form goals. Now this is very important, form. Don't keep that to yourself. Put that out there. Start imprinting form with your clients. Everywhere you go, let them internalize that so they can socialize it. But there's a chance that some of their goals and what matters to them might have adjusted throughout this last little while. Imprint form in conversations and communications constantly. Remember, you're not trying to impress someone. with your technical ability. You're trying to impress upon them that you're really interested in their lives. Value added that they value. Strategy and tactical updates. That's the next bullet. So this comes to you now, and where you start to talk about some of the elements. And this is where you can really start to imprint the distinctions between not just the people, but the practice and the process. Remember, we want your clients to have equal appreciation, understanding, and trust for all three. Not just credentials and capabilities, but what the client experience is all about, fueled by practice management, and what the process does, not just what it is. Mid-course corrections. That's another item on the agenda. This is where you talk about some of the decisions that you've made in the past and how important that dry powder was, and your whole mindset around wealth management and risk management and putting all the pieces of the puzzle together based on external dependencies and circumstances and volatility. It talks about the assessment and then how you're going to carry that forward. And then the reframe really begins. The light switch goes on for your client. That next bullet, an overview of our process. This is where you say to the client, you remember I was mentioning to you on the phone that, we've got some clients that aren't aware of everything we do. And you start to drill down into the process. Now, if you haven't already seen it, I encourage you, perhaps on LinkedIn. If you're not on our LinkedIn community, I hope you join, but ask me on LinkedIn or give us a call. Request the video 7 Pillars, 1 Process. Grab that. You don't want clients transacting and buying things. You want them to buy into one thing. You've got a process in place that puts every piece of the puzzle together. Can't build a puzzle without the picture. You've got the picture. You know where it's all going. Start to show them that there are parts of your process that aren't relevant to your clients yet. Walk through the 7 pillars. Talk in terms of the overarching process. Of course, the 7th pillar, remember, I know you're a good person and you care and you try hard. You have great intentions. Just don't be your own best kept secret. Remember all the value-added services you provide. Give them a placeholder. The 7th pillar is your value-added services. And one of the value-added services is that you make yourself available to be a sounding board for friends and family members of clients. And just talk in terms of that. That's one of the value-added services that you are just so incredibly proud of because of your calling. And of course, just remind your clients that, we only accept new clients who are introduced to us if it's a good fit. But what's gratifying is so many of our clients are not just advocates for us and our value, but they're advocates for their friends. When they get the sense that a friend is feeling a little bit lost or off track, they feel they're doing that friend a disservice by not introducing them to you as that's using you as that sounding board. Again, positioning. You're not pitching the idea of a referral as a favor you're asking of someone. You're positioning it as a service you're providing for someone. Not to steal Terry and Sherri's thunder, because they'll get into this extensively. And then that last bullet, looking down the road. Just keep focusing on where it's going, planning into the future. We've got this. We'll liberate you to live your life. Now let's round this out a little bit. By now, I'm sure you've either thought about or you've already sent out Thanksgiving cards in the past. Well, gratitude for 2020, be sure that if you've not already got the wheels in motion, send at a minimum your favorite clients a Thanksgiving card. Just pay tribute to the relationship and what you've all been through and how grateful you are. You're probably aware that we're big fans of Lavish Cards. Go to their site, give them a call. Their cards are unrivaled. They're the best. Impact, shelf life, the feedback you're going to get. And you could go beyond that if you send out birthday cards or thank you cards, onboarding, thanks for the introduction, whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of great options. These are the nicest cards you'll see. I'm not suggesting a holiday card or a Christmas card in December is a bad idea, but maybe there's some other things you can do. Thanksgiving, I can't in my lifetime remember being so aware of the things I appreciate in my life than this year. I'm also going to suggest that you consider sending out a copy of a book to your clients, and not a financial book. You know, most of your clients, I love financial books. There's some phenomenal financial books written by some great people. I think you're more of that target audience. If I'm your client, I hire you to make all that go away. I don't need to read the books that you read. Okay, that's why I hire you. That's what makes you worthy. I don't have to worry about it. But back to the whole high-tech, high-touch. I've got many clients who have been sending out this book to their clients. The Precious Present. Now, you can read this book in 20 minutes. By Spencer Johnson. He wrote The 1 Minute Manager, co-wrote that. Who Moved My Cheese? I mean, pretty prolific. The Precious Present's talking about today, right? You know the essence of Zen. We could live to be 100. It could be all over tomorrow. I mean, let's just live our lives accordingly, take nothing for granted. You send this book out to your clients. Here's what's going to happen. You send that with a card. And I'm not suggesting you get in the gift-giving business, just things they can hold in their hands, right? From vapor to paper. So much of our lives are so digital, virtual. Things I can hold. Here's what's going to happen. Your client's going to call you back and say, wow, thank you. Appreciate that a lot. And you can say, hey, do me a favor. Pass that on to your kids or your niece or nephew. And they'll probably say, great idea, or already done. They love it. Perfect opportunity. You can also, if you've got some clients that are, playing at a high level, Legacy is just an incredible book. I've got a lot of our clients have sent out their best clients, Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer, that really comes back to the whole concept of the summit and the symbol of achievement and how complex and what's on the other half. Jamling Norgay wrote a book. It was a tribute to his father, Tenzing Norgay, the original Sherpa. I believe he was the first person to have his picture taken on Mount Everest by Sir Edmund Hillary. Really, really great. I just love the metaphor because, your clients, the 25-year overnight success story, they've got the rest of their lives to live, and there's still a lot of moving parts. I don't want them to feel like they'll ever outgrow you. They're not outgrowing you or your process. They're growing into your process as their life unfolds. Let them know that this is why we've got second and third generation clients. Continuity, succession is all part of our process. We're addressing it ourselves in real time. Make sure your clients know that. I've got clients who are also, to finish strong, they're sending out their clients a board game. I mentioned a while back, my oldest son bought a game called Code Names. Great family game, lots of fun, lots of chirping, sometimes hostile, but really good gel. just as a tribute to the family, just to open the conversation about your role. Some of our clients are sending out their clients, they're asking for a family picture, and then they're taking that picture to a shop that will convert it into a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, they're all over the, photo shops and so on that will do that. Just start the conversation about your role. You've seen the ads on TV where these robo shops, they kind of make light of the financial advisor. They're, two sons of a, high net worth client, and the sons are basically saying, you're not going to use dad's advisor, I hope. Like they're kind of downplaying the value, adding to the commoditization. I just want to make sure that clients understand that their relationship with you goes so far beyond technical ability. It's not about products, pricing, and performance. It's about their relationship with your people, your practice, and your process. You're not a wealth manager. Wealth management's part of your process. You don't sell insurance products. Risk management's part of your process. You don't refer your clients out to other service providers. You engage them into your process, which incidentally, I am also going to ask you to consider re-onboarding the most deserving clients you've got, the 20%, the top 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 clients you've got. Re-onboard them and give them a personal financial organizer. Now, we're going to provide you with the checklist, even a rundown of the sample tabs. You can go and do it yourself. If you don't want to reinvent the wheel, you can talk to us about how to put together a life in a book for your clients. If the world is going to be a little bit more virtual, if the world has accepted this type of communication more and is going to be more part of the client experience, you need a keystone to hold it all together, and that's this. You've got three addressable audiences. You've got the clients who need you, the clients who deserve you, and that movable middle. Don't spend time with people who need you at the expense of the people who deserve you. Start there. And then show the movable middle where it's going and see if you can convert them. And then figure out what you're going to do with the people who need you. We've got all kinds of resources on that, but I'll tell you, I could bore you to tears with how incredibly powerful the life in a book, and just some of the tabs. Like when you have a tab called Form Goals, where your client, all their goals, and I mean, some of our clients have gone all the way with that tab right there. This has become like their living legacy, where all the things that are important around family, occupation, and recreational aspirations, and how money is a means to those ends. It becomes almost like a journal. Like it's almost like a crafting book with pictures and all kinds of inclusions. Sometimes you'll put in an envelope for them to tuck things in. This is the lifeblood of your relationship. I know you've got the digital vaults and all of this great stuff, but this doesn't replace it. This supplements that and ensures they're connected to you. The panoramic and fluid and all-encompassing nature of your value. Some of these other tabs, outside service providers, other service providers that you engage into the process. Your resource network. Risk management. I mean, it's all here. All the 7 pillars represented in this. Assets held outside of the process that they're going to monetize at some point and bring into the process. A AAA client going forward should all be onboarded with a life in a book personal financial organizer. It doesn't replace any of those online resources. This is about their connection to you, your people, your practice, and your process. It's not what this costs, it's what it's worth. It's the glue. Help them expand their thinking around how they perceive you and how they describe you, and how you let them just go live their lives. And I'll cover more of this as the rest of the day unfolds. But with that, I've gone a little bit longer than planned, so let me begin to pass the torch to Terry and Sherri. And again, just indulge us with the technology here. We've tried to arrange this format where it's vibrant, but also stable and archivable, with minimizing the glitchiness. But you know how this works. Let me talk about Terry and Sherri. I'll let them really introduce themselves. I just want to give you my perspective because they're going to be talking about referable moments, your highest level of referability, right? How to convert that referability into actual referrals, because you're probably being endorsed and talked about, but not introduced. There's a no man's land of diminishing intent in between. But first of all, I've known Terry and Sherri for a long time. These are the most authentic teachers you'll ever meet. They're serious students, but there's a yin-yang dynamic. What makes a great teacher is they are great students. And they understand the dynamic of the mentor-protege. They get as much value from their clients as they themselves give to their clients. So the clay is soft. And incidentally, I've talked a lot recently about Alvin Toffler, a futurist. He wrote Future Shock. He talked about the new illiterate. Has nothing to do with reading and writing. It has everything to do with the ability to learn, unlearn, relearn, right? The clay is soft. That's what you get in Terry and Sherri. But again, they're going to help you convert referability into actual referrals. And it's not about dramatic change. It's the little things. I don't want to date them. I mean, obviously, you're going to see they're very well preserved, but many, many years. And what is amazing about Terry and Sherri is the longevity of the relationships they have with clients. They never wear out their welcome. They're indispensable to their teams. And they don't talk in theory. They're going to be showcasing standout examples of what elite teams have been doing and will continue to do going forward. They're absolute masters of form, how to capitalize and respond to moments of truth, using annual anchors, milestones, recognition around all of that, and creating consistency in a client experience. So thank you very much so far for hearing me out. You're in very good hands now. So with that, let me turn it over to Terry and Sherri to talk about referable moments. Take it away, Terry and Sherri.
Thanks so much, Duncan, and welcome everyone. We hope you're getting a lot out of the Foresight from 2020 virtual conference. My name is Terry Gronbeck-Jones. I'm a business development advisor with Pareto Systems, as is my colleague Sherri Palle, and we'll hear from her shortly. We're excited today to talk to you about what we call referable moments. And, you know, we have the luxurious position in our job of not only teaching people theory and best practices, but then seeing real life human beings go out and apply those best practices in real life and then come back to us with their own stories. You know, of course, we share stories along the way to inspire them. And then they come back with their own stories based on what we've told them. And it's just this wonderful, never-ending cycle of fresh stories for Sherri and I. So when we talk about things like the service matrix and the call rotation, we get into the theory of it. We get into why it's all important, of course, when we do this normally. And we always say when we're doing a presentation, Sherri and I have done a lot of presentations together. We always say it would be nice to do one just loaded with stories only. So that's what we're going to do today. We hope some of these stories inspire you to do these things that go above and beyond the call of duty as a financial advisory team. And yeah, we're excited to get started. A wonderful quote today to get the ball rolling, and that's Jim Rohn, wonderful business development philosopher from the 80s and 90s. Had the good fortune of seeing many, many times. One of his big lines was giving starts the receiving process. And this might even be a line from the Bible, but it's so true no matter where you heard it or what version of it you heard. And that's really when we give, we receive, and we usually receive a whole lot more. So when advisors are talking to us about the kind of service that they're currently doing, we get this quite often. And usually I like to start the whole conversation about client service with a financial advisor. And I say, what kind of service are you giving your clients? Would you say you're doing a great job there? And quite often you hear, oh yeah, we're doing a really good job. And you say, well, let's talk about that. And they start listing off your deliverables. And they're pretty much what you'd expect from hiring a financial advisor: regular review meetings, regular contact, financial plans. But you know what? None of that's particularly memorable. Now when we're talking about taking advantage of both proactive and reactive referrals. Now, what's the difference there? Reactive referrals is what most advisors in this business enjoy. Most advisors that do a good job at being a financial advisor, someone will go up to their client and say, listen, I'm looking for a new financial advisor. Do you happen to know somebody? And if you've done a good job as a financial advisor, then you will be referred. But you had to wait for that person to go up and ask your client that. So it's a reactive referral in that way. Now, proactive referrals, if you can tap into this, and we're going to be talking about that today, suggests that not only can you take advantage of reactive referrals that happen all the time on street level, but also you can be so top of mind with your clients because you spoil them rotten that they're proactively talking about you on social media to their friends and family. Anytime the subject even remotely comes close to you and your role in their lives, they're telling stories about you. And why that's really interesting is somebody will listen to this act of kindness that you bestowed on a client and go, whoa, my advisor doesn't do stuff like that. And that's where the magic starts to happen on the proactive referral side. Lots of people are doing exactly why they get hired, but it's not really a conversation in itself. Proactive referrals is where the glory lies, in addition to what you already enjoy as reactive. Today, we're going to be getting lots of examples of people who do exactly that. And it should be no surprise. This is one of the hallmarks of the elite teams that we work with, just consistently again and again. But enough about that. Let's hear from my colleague, Sherri. Hey, Sherri.
Hey, thanks, Terry. The stories that clients tell, I just want to bring everybody back to sort of the reality of, how they act in their own life, because how you act in your life is no different how your clients act. And what's really apparent is, most of the service providers that we experience on a day-to-day basis are fairly average. I'll use that word. They're good, they're okay, they're fine, but they're not exceptional. And so when we can move into the stratosphere of delivering exceptional service to the people that we know are our MVPs, and this is really important, what Terry and I are going to talk to you about today is not something that we would recommend you apply to all of your clients. These are very special activities reserved for the most important clients you have. A, you want to keep them. B, you want to grow them. C, you want to get introductions from them. So think about your ideal clients with everything that we speak of today. And one of the things I wanted to anchor this to is something that actually happened when I was working with the team, going through the Pareto process. And I was talking about this concept of, doing exceptional things for your clients. And this team was very candid with me, and they said, look, Sherri, if we do a good job with our investment advice and we do solid financial planning, we shouldn't have to do any of this stuff that you're talking about because, we're doing a good job and people will refer us because of that. And that was really their stance. And, as a coach, you kind of pick your battles. And I was like, okay, if that's how you feel, I've kind of spoke my case and, we'll agree to disagree here. And moved on to another chapter. And then something magical happened. One of the advisors on that team I was working with became a grandfather for the first time. And he was super excited about it on one of our coaching calls. So the first thing I did was I went out and I bought this little pink bejeweled card because it was a granddaughter. And I bought a book for his daughter called Chicken Soup for the New Mom's Soul. And I think there's a little baby item in there too. And I sent it off to Dawn. And on the next coaching call, Dawn was just blown away, that I'd sent this card with this book, that I remembered the little nickname they had for his granddaughter. He was just over the moon about it. So I let him experience that. And then 2 weeks later, he was on the call again, and he's like, oh, I gave the book to my daughter. She's super excited. He was giving me an update and sending me pictures of the grandbaby. And I mean, it was just awesome. It was clearly, a memorable, impactful moment and experience for him. The next coaching call. So this is now 6 weeks later. He wants, my address. His daughter's going to send me a thank you card. Now I'm getting a thank you card from a complete stranger. And I said to him, stop. I need you to see what's happening here. I could work with you as your business coach for a year and help you achieve every one of the goals that we sat down and outlined on our very first session. And I would never receive the level of gratitude I'm experiencing right now. And there was silence. And he said, you're right. And I said, because by doing that, I'm actually delivering what you're expecting. I'm not exceeding your expectations. I'm meeting your expectations. And I need you to understand that when you give good investment advice and financial planning to your clients, you are not exceeding their expectations. You are merely meeting their expectations. And then I said this to Don. I said, I'm going to bet you told more people about me and Pareto in the last 6 weeks than the first 4 months we worked together. More silence. You're absolutely right. And I said, and the best thing, Don, is I'm not motivated. That's not why I'm motivated to send cards and gifts. When I work with someone that I really enjoy working with and something big goes on in their world, I want to share in that in a very authentic and sincere way. The byproduct is they tell other people about it, because how many of us today are going to have someone randomly knock on our door and have some unexpected surprise and delight happen? Not for most of us, maybe none of us today. We don't know. But the reality is when it does happen, it's conversation worthy. And so that's what I want everybody to anchor in, is when we're on the receiving end of thoughtful things, we remember, we respond, we react, we share that with others.
What a great story.
And so we're going to be anchoring much of what we're speaking to the service matrix. There's a lot of activities on here. When we're coaching with teams, when we do a group session, this is one entire webinar. When we're working with teams individually, it's often more than one session because it's like the engine of the practice. But we're going to be touching on 3 specific things: call rotations, moments of truth, and annual anchors in the stories that we share with you today.
We want to talk about call rotation because it's imperative for gathering intelligence about your clients to service them in a way that spoils them rotten. And to that end, a call rotation, just for anybody that doesn't know that term, is a social call. It's very common for a financial advisor to have calls throughout the year that are both a combination of financial and non-financial. This is great. This is wonderful. Never stop doing that. Most people say, we spend most time on the personal, actually, and a little bit on the money. What we say and what we advocate is, so once a quarter, at least for your top clients, and this assumes you haven't talked to them in a little while. You don't have to turn this into a fetish or anything. But if you look at your calendar and you get a bump for the call rotation, call it a social call if that's easier. It's a chance for you to reach out and say, this is a good lead-in, by the way. It's Elizabeth calling. It's just a social call. I was thinking about you this morning. Do you have 5 minutes? And some people worry about bothering people if there's no financial talk. And this is why you set it up this way. It's a social call. Do you have 5 minutes? And you'll be quite surprised and delighted how many people do want to speak to you in that capacity. And it's a chance to look at your notes that you made in prior calls and invest every conversation into the next. And the call rotation is extraordinarily important for a number of reasons when we don't bring up business, because unlike the calls that involve both business and pleasure, this is a disarming variety of call where there's no business. So you leave the person with the impression of, oh, is that the only reason you called? Implied to take an interest in my life? Yeah, I was just thinking about you this morning. And Sherri's point about being genuine about this is a great one. Some people think this is marketing trickery. No, take a genuine interest in the lives of your clients and you'd be well served. But you're giving them an opt-out. They might say, well, I'm just going grocery shopping, but thanks so much. Mark the call off as being done, right? But when you do these calls, you're going to start stumbling into things that we call moments of truth and all kinds of other opportunities to wow your clients. So that's why we talk about call rotations as being integral to servicing other aspects on the service matrix.
And so here's a few things about the call rotation. It's interesting. You called it the social call. I call it the relationship call, whatever you're going to label it so that you understand the meaning and intent behind it. So this really helps you connect with that FORM concept. And for those of you who know, you know what FORM stands for, but it's family, occupation, recreation, and money. And to Terry's point, you know, if you happen to know that they just got back from a trip, or they're going through a kitchen renovation, or they just had hip surgery, there's your lead into that call. So how was the trip? Tell me what the highlight was. Or, you know, how's that hip surgery? Or when do you think you'll be back on the tennis court? People are thoroughly impressed when you remember and recall things that are about them. They almost feel like they're your only client. And if you've ever gone to a mixer, it's interesting because, you know, they say if you want to be interesting, be interested. And if you've ever gone to a mixer or a smoozing event, like most of us have, there's a lot of people that will come and sort of talk at you. And, you know, they're not memorable. You don't really remember who they are. And they're numerous in amount. And then there's that one person that just asks you a lot of questions. And it's like they're genuinely wanting to know more about you. And first of all, you're impressed, but you always remember them. And then if you run into them again and they actually happen to bring up something that you mentioned, you're like thoroughly impressed by this. So this is about, again, paying attention to those things that are really important to your very best clients and bringing them up in a meaningful, authentic way to sort of anchor back to the fact that you're really tuned into what's going on in their world. It's interesting, Terry, you know, talks about enhancing the relationship, competitor proofing. And every time I get to this topic, I think of one of the advisors I work with, Jackie. And, you know, call rotations are something that we recommend for your top clients, which includes your AAA, your AA, and your single A's. And single A's are a little bit of a tougher nut to crack because you don't have that attitude and advocacy in play. They're a little more cold and it's just it's not as fun a call to make. So she was kind of nervous to make this call. And I said, just find one piece of information, Jackie, that you can follow up with this guy that you think is going to strike a chord. So she phoned this guy and she was very, very nervous to do it, to be quite honest with you. And she brought up one thing that she remembered. And she said, his tone, his pitch, his whole demeanor on the phone changed as he was now updating her and informing her on this topic. I think it had to do something with his children. And then he said to her at the end of the call, and this was like the cherry on top, he goes, you know, Jackie, I've got $1 million with a guy at Merrill Lynch and he's never called me like this. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. It's like, wow. She knew he had money somewhere else, but he had never disclosed how much. It was that trust barrier, right? So she was really breaking through that trust barrier. And so it's amazing, like everything else in life, where you put your effort is where you get your results. And that's what this call is today about.
What a great story. Now, it's funny, you know, if you notice on the first slide, there was I think the second slide, there was an accordion. And some of you might be going, why is there an accordion on the slide? Well, a couple of weeks back when Sherri and I decided we were going to do this topic, we were on a coaches call, which is something we affectionately call when all the Pareto business development advisors get together and share stories and talk about new developments, that kind of thing. Anyway, I said, well, Sherri and I are going to be doing a presentation called Referable Moments. And Scott, one of our colleagues says, oh, I got one for you. And I said, oh, I love this, tell us. And he said, well, one of my clients has a client that plays in a polka band. It's like, okay, I like the story already. And due to current circumstances, the gigs have kind of dried up, if you know what I mean. So the guy, being an entertainer and you know, wanting the love of the crowd, like many entertainers, has taken upon himself to start busking in the park with his accordion. So the financial advisor hears this story and gets everybody on his team to go down to the park and visit with this guy, who's of course floored that they took the time to do this. And this gets even better. One of the people on his team knows how to polka dance. So he was dancing to this guy in the park, who, as you can imagine, was absolutely delighted. You know, as I'm telling this story, I realize I've told it about 10 times. I think it gets better every time I tell it. But I'm not even involved in this story. This is Scott's story. And it's his client's story. And I'm telling you, that is just the merit of a good story. It's infectious. I might tell it another couple of times today now that I'm thinking about it, but that's just the way that goes. And that's the first example of what I would call a moment of truth, right? Hearing something like that and going, oh, that's too, you know, so most people go, oh, that's too bad you're not getting any gigs. And this guy said, no, I'm going past that. I'm going to say that, then I'm going to do something about it and just absolutely wow this guy. How many times has the end client told that story? I bet you, here's the short answer, I bet you it's a lot. And that's why moments of truth are the biggest sizzle items on the service matrix, because they're so unexpected. It's not your birthday, it's not Christmas, it's not Thanksgiving. Out of the blue, ding dong, or showing up at a park to see the Pokemon. I mean, it's really full of sizzle.
And Terry, it's interesting because when it comes to moments of truth, one of the things I tell my teams, and again, because this is for your VIPs, your MVPs, what else that week is more important than making the day and become referable with one of your very best clients? Like, put that level of priority on it. And when a moment of truth happens, there's what I call a shrinking window of opportunity. He's telling you that story. You can't show up 4 months later. It won't have the same impact. Someone has a baby, or they get married, or they graduate. You can't send a gift 8 months later. So there is a sense of not only importance, but urgency around acting on these things.
Agreed. Usually time sensitive. I'm going to launch right into another story because this is what we planned for today. So hopefully you like that kind of thing. And that is a lady who has one of those little foo-foo dogs. I'm not exactly sure of the breed, but you know what I'm talking about. They sit on pillows and they're absolutely spoiled rotten. There's just a general snootiness about them. And the whole thing's really fun. Don't get me wrong. But these dogs are spoiled rotten. Let's not kid ourselves. Anyway, the financial advisor hears from one of his top clients with one of these little dogs that the dog is having a birthday party with other dogs. Because of course he is, right? And all these other dogs are bringing presents. So the advisor, again, like a lot of our top clients, hangs up the phone, scratches his chin and says, what can I do here to make this even more fun? So what he does is gets the assistant on his team to put together a wonderful little high-end basket. It is a high-end dog after all, of little treats and everything goes down, and has it FedExed out to the dog with the dog's name on the FedEx waybill, okay, like Pepper or whatever it is. So anyway, as you can imagine, the lady was over the moon about this, and particularly the part that the waybill was filled out to her dog. So what does she do? She takes a picture, gets the FedEx guy to participate, takes a picture of Pepper with his paw on the little electronic device where you sign for your package, sends it to the advisor, who obviously is just delighted with this and gets a good kick out of it. And she says, is it okay if I tell this story on Facebook?
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a second. I don't know how many dogs or Facebook friends this lady has, but let me tell you, sometimes people say, Terry, how do I use Facebook and social media effectively? Well, here's a good way. Spoil your clients rotten, and they will do the bragging for you. So roughly, I don't know, 200-300 people, however many friends this lady has, heard this story of how this advisor rolls, how he treats his clients. It's pretty safe to say most of those people didn't have their advisor send them a basket full of dog treats for the dog's birthday party or something similar, because that's just the way things are. It's a very special breed of advisor, pardon the pun, that does this kind of thing. So imagine that, all those people getting a nagging feeling that the grass is maybe greener, where it might not have ever occurred to them before. People don't know they're indifferent about their current advisor until somebody tells a story like that. And then you go like, whoa, I didn't know like such a thing was possible, however you think about it in your mind. So that's just one that happened recently that I just love, Sherri.
Well, and the other thing, Terry, is, it inspires people to think, like, when is the last time my advisor even called me? Like, let alone get a gift, but, when's the last time I've heard from them? I want to talk about the trophy that you see on the screen there. It's, it's not the actual trophy, but that team I opened with, who really said we shouldn't have to do this. We should just do a good job being a professional, Sherri. And then they saw the light by experiencing a moment of truth on their own. They became like superstars, rock stars at this. And often when we get this up and running with the team, they'll come to calls and they'll go, oh, this is happening with a client. What should we do? Do you have any ideas? And we're happy to give them some suggestions, and we find one that will really work for their client. But I remember coming to a call and they're like, guess what we did? And I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear this. They had a top client who had a tradition of an annual family reunion, a lot of people getting together. And their family had actually invented this game. I still don't know much about it, but it was a physical game. And every year, one person was crowned the champion, and they had like bragging rights for the whole year till the next reunion. And the advisor got off the phone and he thought, well, this is pretty cool. And he actually made a trophy with the family name on it, with the name of the tournament on it. and sent it to the client so they could actually have something physical that would pass year after year after year to whoever was the reigning champion of that activity. And the neat thing was, again, they didn't ask me for that idea. They came to me with that. And I was like, okay, you guys are like nailing this. This is amazing. And just to be clear, this trophy did not have any logos on it. Okay, so there was no branding of any sort. When you send something that is meaningful, impactful, you do not have to have your logo on it. And honestly, when something arrives with a logo on it, and there is a time and place for branding, don't get me wrong, but something like this, it almost arrives first as a promotional item, second as a gift. And this is really about being a gift first. So just keep that in mind.
You can see why Sherri and I always say we could spend a whole session on this. In fact, we only have about 8 minutes left. And I already have so many more stories I want to tell. One more super quick one. I had a client that was just starting to get into this for the first time. And he said, Terry, is this a moment of truth? I have a client moving out of state. Is that a moment of truth? And I said, well, have you ever moved? And he said, yeah. And I said, how is that? Is it a big deal? And he said, yeah, totally. Out of state, even more of a big deal. What can I do? Well, what's it like to move out of state? What's it like to move? You're not eating very well for at least a couple of days, right? So what I had this guy do is find a couple of restaurants that had really good reviews in the general area of the new house. He arranged it with them to have a couple of really nice meals delivered to the new home. He delivered all that information in a wonderful handwritten card, just saying, just call these guys. They'll be expecting you. Just get whatever you like. Here's some menus. And then a couple of weeks later, as you can imagine, the client was floored. A couple of weeks later, I'm talking to the client again. He says, I don't know if it's a coincidence, Terry. He goes, but I got a referral from that client, and we get that a lot. I don't know what the heck's going on over here, but we're getting referrals anyway. So it wasn't a coincidence, and that's one more moment of truth. And Terry, I don't know if you have a quick one before we move on here. Another story. I know you do.
Well, I'll just share this one because one of the people that I worked with had someone who became mortgage free, and that's, a major financial goal for most people. And so he had a really nice brass door knocker sent, again, no logos of any kind, just the date engraved on it that the individual now technically owned their entire house. And so you can imagine every day they walk through their front door, they see this amazing anchor to this memorable moment and achievement. So, at the very least, as financial advisors, make sure you're on top of the financial milestones, like becoming a millionaire, retiring, paying off their home. There's all kinds of milestones related to what you do for them, and it just makes perfect sense for you to be acknowledging them.
So as a reminder, moments of truth are not predictable, but we can make sure, darn sure, our entire team is on high alert, antennas up for big deal moments in our top clients' live. We reserve this elite level of service, recognizing moments of truth for the top clients. Think of the top 20%. That's what we're talking about here. Today, we're going to offer up sort of a resource pack of some of the themes that we're talking about, and we'll talk about that in a second. But one of the theme pieces in there is going to be common moments of truth. A lot of these are self-evident. They're a big deal anyway. But, don't make assumptions. Make sure that everybody on the team has this sheet and say, listen, we are trying to get better at this. Look out for these moments. If you see something on this list or anything else that is construed as a big deal in terms of their tone of voice, and that's one of our top clients, I want to know about it. Let's get together. Let's have a huddle and say, what can we do here? What can we do to enhance this happy situation? What can we do to maybe make this sad situation a little better?
And so here's a copy of that Moments of Truth package. It's got 7 of the most common types of things that are probably occurring in your client's world. Lots of ideas, suggestions, books, quotes, you name it. And we also want to be clear that, it doesn't necessarily mean gift giving. Sometimes it's a phone call after a surgery or a special trip. Send me a picture, tell me about the highlights. Sometimes it's just an article that you might send, or even a magazine or something. So it's not necessarily about spending a lot of money all the time. It's about being thoughtful in the moment. And the best way to make this happen, and Terry, you've said it a couple times, it's so important. You can't really pre-schedule this. You don't know when it's going to happen. You have to be listening, is to make sure on your weekly team meeting agenda, you have form and moments of truth so that you are connecting on this every single week, week in, week out, and you're not just talking about it, but you're actually doing it. The last one in this package, I do want to just spend a quick second talking about, and it's when the news isn't good. It's always fun doing things when, exciting, happy things are happening in people's lives. Not so great when it's not happy news. And sometimes we get sort of paralysis by overanalysis. We don't know what to do, so we do nothing. If your client goes through something bad and you don't know what to do, just send a card that says, thinking of you in this difficult time. Trust me, that will be felt, it will be heard, it will be hugely impactful.
You don't need much more than that. I totally agree.
And so we're going to spend a couple of quick minutes talking about the impact of the annual anchor. Again, this is a little more predictable, something that we build a tradition around, unlike a moment of truth, which happens at different times for different people, for different events. This is something that our clients look forward to receiving. It's almost like when you go on vacation and you buy souvenirs, it's because the vacation's going to end, but you have the souvenir physically anchoring you back to that moment. Well, they have review meetings with you, and they come in and do strategy and tactical meetings, and they have phone calls with you, but that's not a lot of time throughout a period of years. So when you send physical items to your clients, it's like anchoring them back to the relationship on a consistent basis.
So just a quick one, one of my favorites, one of my clients, believe it or not, drops off homemade pies to his clients on Thanksgiving every year, but whatever it is, a week or two ahead of Thanksgiving. He says, yeah, I'm doing pies again this year. Can I set you up with a pumpkin or a cherry? Just let me know. And then a couple of years later, he says, this is one of the greatest initiatives I have ever done. I know it sounds weird, because the thought that there's 20 people around a Thanksgiving table all talking about where the pie came from speaks volumes about how high impact it is. And he said, and even better, sometimes they're not home when I go to drop it off with my assistant. I have to drop it off at the neighbor's. Can you just imagine? The neighbor's like, who are you? Oh, I'm the financial advisor. I'm just dropping off a pie for Thanksgiving. And again, there's that indifference. Hey, you're just kind of like, wow, my financial advisor doesn't drop off pies unexpectedly. Like, maybe I should be looking for it, and on and on and on. Sherri, I know we have a couple minutes left. You can probably think of one as well.
Yeah, and one of the ones that's really simple. So there's the food, there's the wine, baskets, all kinds of stuff around family activities. But I still have some teams that send really nice quality calendars. And the nice thing about a calendar is most houses, even though we're digital, still have one physical calendar in the house. So it's got to be, we're not talking about those, 99 centers. It's 20, 25 bucks. It's nice. And it's got 12 months of shelf life, and they look at it every day. And isn't it wonderful if you can actually ahead of time write a really nice birthday greeting on the square? So they flip up the calendar, and it's like in the month, it's like, happy birthday, Terry. I mean, it's those little touches that make such a difference in terms of the impact.
Hey, let me fill in the last bit, Sherri. I'm going to guess no logo on that, right?
Yeah, no logo. Exactly.
Okay, so we got a whole bunch of great resources to offer up today. That Moments of Truth guide has, with Sherri said, 7 different situations and 23 pages of potential ways you might go about recognizing that. There's a list of common moments of truth. There's some annual anchor samples that you can take advantage of to start your yearly tradition. Think about doing that at an off-speed time of the year when it's not Christmas, not Thanksgiving, and it's kind of nice when nothing else has happened. But that's about it for us. The way you get that resource pack is you reach out and connect with Duncan on LinkedIn and say, listen, can I get some of that resource pack action? And we'll set you up for sure. Thanks for making half an hour of your valuable time for us today, Sherri, and I really appreciate it. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the Foresight from 2020 conference.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Okay, Terry and Sherri, great job. Thank you very much, as always. And I'm really glad that you led with that quote from Jim Rohn. It's interesting, Terry and I met back in the early 90s. I had a business that was doing, among other things, promoting personal and professional development seminars featuring people like Jim Rohn. And I loved it because I got to go to all the seminars. But what was really interesting is that our primary audience was made up of elite fee-for-service professionals. And my interactions with those people led me down this path of becoming a practice management consultant. So I really like the origins. And if you ever happen to find a book written by Jim Rohn or a recording of one of his presentations, it'd be well worth the investment of time. Obviously, talking about referrals as a consultant, very commonly in early conversations with clients, they will ask me, how do I get more referrals? And I will generally answer that question with a question. I'll say, are you referable? And of course, most will say yes. And I'll say, well, do you deserve referrals? And they'll say, well, I'd like to think so. And it will lead to this conversation about service. Now, you look at the word deserve. It stems from the Latin words to serve. And really what's important in terms of improving referability is to look at the foundation of the quality of service you provide. And as you know, service is generally broken down as either being proactive or reactive. So proactive service is process-driven, and it gets out in front of issues. It's not promissory on performance around your technical solutions. It's promissory on a client experience, what it means to be your client. Reactive service, and this is what Terry and Sherri were really touching on, is how you respond to critical life events, moments of truth, and milestones, all the things that occur in your client's life as the relationship unfolds. So that moment of truth package that Terry and Sherri were referring to, I highly recommend you get your hands on that. And again, we're going to be making a variety of these resources available to you just because of the fact that you've attended this session. But yeah, I cannot overstate how service and being process-driven will make you referable, and then the ability to articulate value and communicate the positioning of an introduction will convert referability into consistent in terms of quality and quantity of introductions. Now, if you'll just indulge us, before we move on to our next speaker, I'd like to just play this brief clip. It is a showcase of our good friends at Lavish Cards. So it'll just be a couple of minutes and we'll be right back.